is Long Way to the Top, and I'm your host, Shane Bryan. My next guest is an English cricket commentator, former English Test cricketer from 1992 until his retirement in 2009. He made his Test debut in the 1997 Ashes series against Australia, captained England once, known as the Runaway leader, then traded it all for a music career. Mark Butcher has performed with former Stranglers frontman Hugh Cornwell, performed on telly with Sarah Brightman, and now he has had his music recorded as part of a new release for Think Loud for Parkinsons. Mark Butcher, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Shane. Lovely intro.
Oh, thank you. I'm not... Now, the original Ashes series that you debuted in against Australia, did we win or did you win?
You won 3-2. I played in 4 Ashes series between 97 and 2003 and didn't end up on the winning side once. So safe to say it was a loss. But it was actually the closest one I played in, actually.
Oh, really?
Although we were 3-1 down going into the last test at the Oval, which we managed to nick a win.
Yeah.
To make it 3-2. But yeah, I mean, it's the only time other than the Ashes in 2005 that England have won 2 test matches against Australia since 86, 87, I think.
Now, I actually knew we won. I just wanted to take that opportunity just to, rub it in,
I had a feeling you might have known all of those things. Probably better than me.
Oh, dear. Now, look, I think, your test career has been described, actually, I think it was ESPN that said 4 patchy years, 3 profitable ones, and 1 amazing day.
yeah, they're a bit being kind. It was an interesting sort of arc, I suppose.
What was the amazing day?
Well, that was Australia as well.
Yeah.
So at least I got 1 over on them at one point.
Yes.
At Headingley back in 2001. Which kind of the day itself, or the innings itself, kind of paved the way for the rest of my career, really, I suppose. I shouldn't have been in the team, but it was only injuries that got me in the team for that Ashes series in 2001.
Yeah.
And then from that moment on, I played something like 43 consecutive tests in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And had a really good time of it. Prior to that, it was patchy, to say the least.
Yes, but I guess it's always one of those things that, it's an unfortunate situation that you have to then step in because someone's, had an injury.
No, not unfortunate at all.
No, exactly. That's what I was going to say. So, what led you into cricket? Was it one of those cases of all the kids really wanted to do that growing up, or was it a real desire for you?
Well, my dad played, so my dad Alan was at Surrey between 1971 and 86.
Yeah.
And so he was a professional cricketer at the age of 18, which is around about when I was born. So throughout my life, I was kind of involved in and around cricket and cricketers. And from the age of 2 or 3, I think I was, swinging a bat around and I just loved it. It was in the family and totally in my blood.
Yeah. And I guess it's one of those things too, that once you start playing, that you then, like you were playing for Surrey, and you wanted to go, okay, I really want to get into Test cricket. I really want to better myself throughout that whole process.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was always my sort of burning ambition. I mean, even when I was at school, sort of sport and cricket sort of overrode pretty much everything else. And I was probably naive and stupid enough to think that was what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Which, looking back on it, was a real sort of advantage. I think it never occurred to me that I wouldn't be at least a professional cricketer with the overriding ambition to one day play for England.
Yeah.
And you might sort of think that sounds a bit arrogant, that you would imagine that was what was going to happen. But I kind of took everything else off the table
Yeah.
in terms of where I might end up. And I mean, that could have blown up horribly in my face.
Yeah.
But fortunately, uh, I had the sort of the drive to make it happen, and no unfortunate incidents occurred
Mm.
that meant that it didn't.
No plan B. I think that I love that.
No plan B. No,
Always a plan
well,
A.
I mean, the only plan B, I guess, would have been around music. I'd sort of
Yeah.
started playing. But I'd always sort of sung and performed and done all that sort of stuff at
Mm.
school. That was the other thing that I loved to do.
Mm.
And then started playing guitar and writing my own songs at around about the age of 11 or 12. And then was in bands from sort of 15 or so.
Mm.
So, the two things sort of went side by side, albeit they were completely unrelated. And as it turned out, one of those things was always going to sort of take over the other, or
Yes.
make it impossible for the other one to be a sort of a viable option, up until the point where I got older and the body started to fall apart.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Because we look at anything we do in life, and it's like, we get put into these boxes, like you're a cricketer, you're a musician. You can't be both. I mean, you can be, but
Yeah.
in people's minds, you can't be both.
Yeah, I mean, I still find that it's not a struggle. It's just a fact of life. The people know you for one particular thing, and it's very difficult for them to get your heads around the fact that you might be able to move into a slightly different sphere.
Yeah.
And so, I've had released 3 albums now of
Yeah.
my own material, so songwriting or whatever, and I've done various things. I've ended up. I've had my voice on. I was just thinking about this the other day. I've completely forgotten, but my voice is on a record that includes Paul Rodgers of Free. He
Yeah.
was kind of one of my heroes growing up. I absolutely loved that band.
Yeah.
And Bad Company and whatever. And by an extraordinary twist of fate, which sort of involves cricket as well, I ended up getting to know the sister of John Bonham, the late John Bonham from Led Zeppelin. And she asked me to sing backing vocals on one of her albums, and one of the songs, a song called "Hold On," ended up being a duet. It started off as a single of hers on her own, and then she struck up a friendship with Paul Rodgers of Free.
Yes.
The song became a duet, and my voice is now on the background vocals of the song "Hold On" of her album Duchess. And so all these these weird amalgamations have occurred between. And the reason there's a cricketing angle to that is the reason that I got to know Deborah was because of the tragic passing of Ben Hollioake, and the song that I wrote in his honor. Sorry, this is a bit convoluted, but
Yes.
the song that I wrote in his honor that I played at his funeral service at Southwark Cathedral, her husband produced it.
Yeah.
And so he and I got on really well. He introduced me to his wife, Deborah. And then this whole sort of thing expanded. And that's how I got back into sort of recording and playing music around about sort of 2002, 2003.
Very interesting that, you kind of moved away from the music to focus on that cricket career, but the music still brought you back, one way or another, even if it was through that cricket career.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess one of the great advantages, and any sort of pro athlete will tell you this, is that you get to a certain sort of standing, perhaps, or a certain notoriety.
Yeah.
And you always find out that there are people in other walks of life who love what you do, who would have loved to have been a sports person themselves. And I think it goes both ways. Sports people always want to be rock stars, and rock stars want to be sports people. And so you end up building these relationships and getting these these introductions.
Yeah.
That can sometimes turn into wonderful things, completely by accident. But I've been very grateful for it.
Was there ever a point when you were, pursuing that cricket career that you went, maybe I'm going down the wrong path. Maybe I should be focusing on the music career. And were there any opportunities that came up that you just went, No, I'm not going to take it.
um, I mean, there were times during my career, around about sort of the turn of the century, where I was kind of considering jacking the whole thing in because I really wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't playing well.
Yeah.
I was having sort of issues in my personal life. And so, yeah, I mean, I kind of seriously considered quitting prior to
Yeah.
that Ashes series in 2001. So there were a lot of sort of happy coincidences, and happy sort of outcomes. Really, one being that I at the time when I was considering quitting, I picked up the phone to my dad, who, you would imagine as a youngster that I've spent a lot of time sort of working on my batting and bowling and whatever with my father. But the truth of it was that he was in the middle of his career at the time, so we spent very little time together
Yeah.
on my cricket. And during the sort of um, the winter of sort of 2000, 2001, I'd got to this very low ebb, and I picked up the phone and just said, "Dad, I need your help. Um, I'm quite happy for you to reteach me how to bat again. Almost as though I'd never played the game before, and let's see if we can kind of resurrect my sort of passion for it." And we spent 3 months together, in the sort of like January, February, March of 2001, and he completely stripped back everything that everything that I'd come to know, and we started again. And from there is what happened in the 2001 Ashes series and that innings of 173. So it just, the whole thing was, well, put it this way, it certainly wasn't preordained, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It was kind of, there was a lot of luck, a lot of heartache, a lot of sort of tears and frustration or whatever that turned into, what would become the second part of my England career.
Yeah, yeah, it is a very long way to the top to get to anything. It doesn't matter whether it's music, whether it's a cricket career. Who were your music? I mean, obviously from a cricket perspective, you had influences through your dad's cricket career, but from a music perspective, who were your influences growing up?
Blimey, all kinds. I mean, in the house, my dad had sort of like a pretty good vinyl collection, and we always had the radio on. My mum absolutely loved music, and so it was everything. I remember, one of my first memories are my dad gave me one of those, the little suitcase record players.
Oh yes.
Brought it up into the bedroom around, I don't know, age 7 or 8. Plonked it down and sort of and threw a couple of vinyl records on there, and they were all sort of his early Beatles albums. So it was With the Beatles, Abbey Road, Help, Hard Day's Night. And I remember sort of, bouncing around the room with a tennis racket, like pretending to play along and singing along to those records. So those are kind of, the first music that was actually mine, or it was his, but the first albums that I remember putting on and sort of actively listening to were those.
Yeah.
And then, it's anything from sort of, reggae. My family background on my mum's side is Jamaican. So my mum sort of introduced me to a lot of reggae, like Toots and the Maytals and Bob Marley and stuff, obviously. Hard rock, the blues, all kinds of influences that are flying in from everywhere. And then, I do remember sort of like desperately wanting an electric guitar around about 10, 11 years old, from watching maybe it was a bit later than that. Anyway, from watching it, they had a live telecast of a Queen concert.
Yeah.
I remember seeing sort of, Brian May stood up on front of the stage, and just thinking that just looks like the coolest thing in the world to do. So I sort of begged and pleaded, and my mum got me a sort of a knockoff Telecaster. And so, so it started very early, and the influences were myriad. And then it became very much focused on guitar players, so Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. I know exactly what you mean, seeing, especially Live Aid 85, watching, Queen up there, and they just looked like gods, and it was like, I wished at that point I could sing. I can't sing, but anyway. So
Well, it's never stopped me. So.
no, well, that's right. There's always that. Now, you mentioned that you were on an album with, Free and Paul Rogers, which, is fantastic. But you're now on an album with some pretty amazing names, and
Mm.
you've got a song on there, No Tomorrow, which we'll play shortly. But how does it feel knowing that you're on an album here with some names like, Leo Sayer, Arthur Brown, Hugh Cornwell, who you played with, you performed with?
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a sec. Mike and the Mechanics, Ann Peebles. I mean, like some just amazing names in music history.
Yeah, but it's still a slight pinch yourself moment. Richard Thompson and Marcella Detroit.
Yes.
I mean, so again, you sort of think about the links there. Um, you know, Marcella Detroit was backing singer for Eric Clapton back in the day.
Yeah.
So, the 6 degrees of separation there. Um, uh, just it first and foremost, it's a great record for a fabulous cause. And secondly, I've sort of, you've listened to the track listing on it, and my song doesn't feel out of place in there.
No.
One iota, which is great. It's kind of it probably matters little to anybody else, but it's a kind of a justification of
Yeah.
all the time and effort that I've put into the music over the years to sort of find it in that sort of company. Roger Taylor from Queen's on there.
I know.
Richard Thompson, who's just an incredible guitar player and songwriter and stuff like that. So it's really nice.
Even if you want to look at degrees of separation, Dirty Strangers, Alan Clayton, his best friends, with Keith Richards. It's just incredible, the connections there. I guess being, though, in England, in the music scene in England, England's not that big a place. You would get a lot of people going, well, I know that person, or I live next door to that person.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Surrey has been a hotbed of particularly in the 60s. Sort of artists that have come out of this county. The Surrey Delta, as they call it. So you've got Jimmy Page, Clapton, Jeff Beck.
Yeah.
We're all sort of born not too far away from where I was. And as I say, that there are always sort of pretty strong connections with sport. I met Mick Jagger for the first time when I was on tour with England in the West Indies in 1997. Who else? Brian Mayers quite very often pops into the Oval for Test matches. Yep. There's a lot of cross pollination between these guys. I met Eric Clapton through cricket, and we sort of have a lasting relationship. Well, basically, I text him on his birthday, and we share a few messages once or twice a year.
That's
and he
good
was
enough.
kind enough. Yeah, and he was kind enough actually to give me one of his stage Martin acoustic guitars to auction off for another charity that I'm pretty closely involved with the Bob Willis Fund for male prostate cancer.
Yeah.
So when I released my last or my most recent album, Always Somewhere, we had one of Eric's guitars to auction off on the night to raise money for that charity. So the connections are pretty strong.
How did the recording with Hugh Cornwell come about? Because that was if there's any band, I guess, from the 70s and 80s that were, I know in my awareness, I loved them. I thought they were fantastic. Like that would have been a golden moment.
Yeah, I'm struggling to remember how and why that happened. Actually, I think the catalyst for it would have been a guy called David English, who is now no longer with us, but is this extraordinary character, who not only managed Clapton when he was in Derek and the Dominoes for RSO Records, he appeared on on the war movie A Bridge Too Far, and became known as the sort of the Bun Father, right? So he ran this charity cricket team called the Bunburys, and you'd have the likes of Bill Wyman and members of Pink Floyd and stuff playing in these charity cricket matches over the years. And of course, his connection to the cricket world sort of meant that a lot of players, ex-players and current players, would come along and join these teams with the celebrities, and you go out and play these charity matches. And because of that, you ended up meeting the likes of Hugh and various other, the names are too many to mention. And I think that's how that came about. So Hugh and I ended up on a radio show, I think, on the BBC, and performed "Get a Grip on Yourself" or something by the Stranglers.
Yes.
We were sat in the green room before it went on, and he taught me the song before we went on,
really?
and we did it live.
Wow.
And I think that was the only time that we'd ever performed together, unless he joined one of the bands that I fronted for the Cricketers Awards dues at the Royal Albert Hall. I can't remember. I'm not sure he did. But anyway, that's how that came about. And he and I have sort of been in contact, at various times over the years. And so, and it's another sort of great thing, and a little story, a little connection that cricket has sort of thrown up to me into the music world.
And of course, it's all come back around again because he's performing with Richard Thompson on this on this album. Think Loud for Parkinsons, which in itself is pretty amazing. Here you've got someone who is primarily folk music performing with someone who is primarily legend. Punk music. Who would have thought?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I guess as music fans, and whether this is stronger in your teenage years or whether it remains, throughout your life, people have their sort of genres and their idea of what proper music is.
Yeah.
And and never the twain shall meet. If you're a punk fan, you're unlikely to like Fairport Convention or something.
Yeah.
But the truth of it is that all these musicians are musicians first and foremost, and the style that they choose to sort of put their own records out has nothing to do with their love of music overall. So these guys are, of course, it seems a little bit absurd that they would be on a record together, but it actually makes perfect sense when you sort of drill down into the fact that they see music as music.
And I think it's good from a fan perspective too. I wasn't a Fairport Convention fan. I was a Stranglers fan, so I'm looking at this going, oh wow, Hugh Cornwell's on this, and I mean, I've had the pleasure of chatting with Hugh, a couple of times. Great guy. And to look at this and go, yeah, well, it actually does make sense, and especially doing Tobacco Road as well, which is, it's fantastic. With this album, and of course, we would like to talk about the fact that the album has been put together through a guy who is connected in some way or another with all of these bands, and of course, that's Ian Grant.
Yeah. So I first met Ian, again, it goes back to the Debbie Bonham sort of story, is that he was sort of lightly managing the Deborah Bonham band at the time, and his big group was Big Country in the 80s. And so I sort of met him at social gatherings with the Bonhams and the Bullocks. And we'd kind of stayed in touch ever since. Obviously his connections to the music industry and all that kind of stuff, I felt could come in handy in some way down the line. And then I found out maybe 2 or 3 years ago that he's got Parkinson's disease. Now I know a little bit about that because my father-in-law was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. It turned into dementia. And he passed, blimey, coming up 8-9 years ago now.
Yeah.
And so immediately when he was talking about doing the record and sort of why he was doing it and the reasons behind it, I was like, okay, well, I'd love to be involved in that. And so Ian has sort of throughout his illness and obviously his want to try and to get a handle on it, or to sort of get out in front of Parkinson's disease and not allow it to define his remaining years on the planet. He wanted to do something special in order to raise funds, to help with the research and help with the trying to defeat Parkinson's, but also giving himself something to do, a real purpose, and meld that with his love for music and musicians. So it just seemed like the perfect opportunity to sort of get involved. And he, I think I might have sent him the sort of like the rough mixes of the album Always Somewhere, and he picked out No Tomorrow as being the track that he thought would fit really well with the record, and perhaps even though my intention in the writing of it was nothing to do with being ill, for example. It might have been sick with love, but not ill physically. There was obviously something in the lyric that he liked and understood as being something that you could put on an album like this, and then it will work.
And it certainly isn't out of place, and I think that's the key with this album. I love the fact that in the twilight of Ian's career and life, that he's still able to go, well, I'm fighting this with all that is within me, and I'm going to put this album out, and we're gonna bring awareness to this thing, and hopefully find a cure.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge testament to him and Paul Mitchell. I think his mate, who've done incredible work. Because look, this all started during COVID as well. So I remember he sent me the track "Think Loud" itself, that Leo Sayers singing that opens up the album. And he wanted people to kind of like to set up cameras and sing backing vocals or play guitar or whatever on Zoom links, so that they could put the whole thing together as sort of like a video for the track, and then also use stems of you singing backing vocals so that they could put it all together. So no one was in the same place at the time. It was very incredible much of the COVID time that track came together, I think. So, it took a hell of a lot of work. You imagine all that editing and syncing that had to be done with I don't know 30 odd people.
Amazing.
Backing vocals on the track.
I know, and to get people, not just Leo Sayer, but also get John Ilsley from Dire Straits, and some the having one in some way or another, through people that they know, been affected by this horrible disease, and like yourself, you've put together a great track, and I love the fact that all of these artists have just gone, yep, count me in. I'm happy to help.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. What is next for Mark Butcher? Have you got a new album coming out? New songs on the horizon?
I was digging through some files just yesterday. My last album was out last September, Always Somewhere, and that's still sort of on an ongoing process. And of course, with it being March here, the English cricket season is just around the corner. So that I'm not writing or anything at the moment. In fact, haven't done so since the record was out. But I'm hoping to sort of get out and play some more shows, perhaps towards the end of the summer, and then maybe we'll get back into doing some writing again. But I found a track actually that I wrote again probably during a quarantine somewhere in a hotel in India back in 2020 that kind of we didn't get round to sort of finishing, and so we're just talking about ways of getting that done. And perhaps releasing it as a single, just to give the album itself a bit of a push during the course of the summer when I'm kind of inactive.
Yeah.
But other than that, no. I mean, it's just I'll be off to Pakistan, I think, fairly soon to go and cover the PSL,
Yeah.
and then back straight into the Test match summer, and the county summer back here in England, at the end of May.
Still commentating, still doing,
Oh yeah,
still got that love of
yeah. Well,
cricket.
you see, the music thing is great, and it kind of feeds my soul, and I love it, and the beauty of it is that you can do it as a lot of the as BB King proved, that you can do it until you can't stand anymore.
Yeah.
But with a man's got to earn a living,
Got to
so
pay the
commentary is
bills.
a very good way of doing it. And I absolutely love that. If I didn't want to stay in cricket as a coach. I kind of had enough of sort of dressing rooms and
Yeah.
being surrounded by blokes the whole time. And I love the game. So don't get me wrong. It's got nothing to do with sort of having a problem with cricket, but I just wanted to see it from a different angle. And the sort of my creative side is satisfied with doing television.
Yeah.
So I know the game, but the actual broadcasting side of it, and I produce the odd documentary and various other things, are very much sort of part of scratching that creative itch that I have when it comes to music as well. So I love my job, and it pays the bills.
Absolutely. Now, where can people grab your music from, or have you got a website?
Yeah, so the website is www.markbutchermusic.com. The latest album is Always Somewhere, and it's on all of the digital streaming services. So it's obviously difficult to get physical copies of stuff nowadays, even though they are out there, of my three albums.
Yes.
But they're on, it's on Spotify, Amazon, iTunes, the whole thing.
Yes.
So check it out.
And if you want a physical copy, there, of course, is this. So I've got it here in my hot little hands. Think Loud for
Look
Parkinsons.
at that. I haven't got one of them yet.
You haven't got a record yet? Oh, no.
I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for mine.
It's fantastic. And, of course, Mark is on that. And I'll put the links to the whole Think Loud project onto the podcast if you're listening to this on
Brilliant.
the podcast. And, grab yourself a copy of it. Think Loud for Parkinsons. Thanks, Mark Butcher, for joining us on the show.
Absolute pleasure. It's been great to meet you, Shane.
Hit plus or follow to subscribe to the podcast, and head over to Facebook at The Long Way to the Top Podcast and give us a like. Keep on rocking, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Long Way to the Top.